Hello, I'm Mantastic'c and Fantastic, and today I want to talk about which Godfest exclusive you should be choosing for your weekly exchange medals. So, during the course of December, we're going to be giving various exchangeable medals which can be redeemed for Godfest exclusives. In the case of the current Great Witch Godfest exclusives, this particular medal and only this medal expires on January 9th, 2022. So unlike the other ones where you can acquire it and just let it sit in your box until you need something, this one has to be used immediately or you run the risk of actually losing it. As a result, there is a bit of urgency, and with that in mind, I'm going to just take a look at the most valuable cards I feel, in my opinion, to give you a bit of a better idea of who to pick. So, as per like the other videos I've done in this series, I'm basically going to be breaking down which are, I feel, like the more valuable cards to exchange for from the respective medals. And for this Great Witch Exchange medal, once again, it expires on January 9th. So make sure you actually use it. All right, so for the Great Witch's medal, as a general blanket statement, if you don't have any of the cards, either Saline or Varroa are going to be the two most valuable ones moving forward, because it's highly unlikely Gung-Ho is going to power creep these cards because they're doing something that's quite unique. It's not technically helping you clear endgame content, but it's making you have a much better time in other aspects of the game. Furthermore, let's say you have every single Great Witch already. Getting another Saline or Varroa is not a bad idea either, because they do give a weapon assist that grants a dungeon boost, and there's only 4 cards in the game that can do so. So it's quite a rare thing to do, and if you are doing intermediate button farming, you really want to have these dungeon bonus awakenings. So for Saline, what Saline does is she gives you 1.8 times rank experience. And this is meaningful because there are only 2 cards in the game that actually grant 1.8 times rank experience. And the other one being a collab-based card, which you're probably not going to get. Maybe it doesn't even come back ever again. So point of the matter is, you need to have Saline if you want to like optimize or maximize your returns on rank experience. So in the earlier ranks, you're probably going to just basically possibly be abusing it to like just chain rank ups at more favorable times. Because if you think about it, every time you rank up, you fully restore your stamina, which in turn makes it so you can just keep playing forever. At lower ranks, you can quote-unquote play forever, which is obviously a nice thing. And then at higher ranks, you might start trying to utilize Saline leader swap approaches. Basically, the idea is you enter the dungeon with Saline as a leader, and then you leader swap someone better into position. And when you leader swap someone better into position, you still retain the bonus rank experience for the entire duration of the dungeon, but you now have a leader that actually can do something. On the bright side, Saline's leader skill has been buffed to grant 10 times attack for light attribute cards, which is much better than it was beforehand. So for even like easier content, you may not even need to leader swap. But of course, this might be a little difficult to set up depending on how deep or shallow your monster box is. But point of the matter is, only 1 of 2 cards in the entire game that grants 1.8 times rank experience. And then, like I mentioned already, Saline's hat and Varroa's hat also give you the dungeon bonus awakening. So if you have 1 of every card already, getting another hat is always meaningful. For Varroa, Varroa gives you 1.3 times egg drop rates, and this only can be used in solo mode, but at the same time, there are only 3 possible cards in the entire game that let you do this thing. And the other cards being Varroa Kitty or the Gung-Ho Knight, which should be available at least now, I think, if the rotation happened. But point of the matter is, only 3 cards can do so, and the idea is you're able to play the intermediate difficulty of an event dungeon, and you're allowed to button your way or even just one combo your way through and get significantly higher drop rates for less stamina and less effort. The idea is you're becoming the most stamina efficient method to acquire, say, like the Gung-Ho collab ticket farming in order to convert them into pies, which give you skill ups later on. And like I said, if you don't have one of these 3 cards, you really want to pick up Varroa because it's going to change your life, because you now can acquire at incredibly stamina efficient rates drops for various events. And I do have a video on my YouTube channel, you can take a look at it, of showcasing like basically you stick a team of Varroa Kitty or one of the other equivalent leaders as your leader, and then populate your subs with as many dungeon boosts as possible, and then bring buttons if at all convenient, or just stick on weapon assists that give the dungeon bonus awakening. So basically, a too long didn't read is like Saline and Varroa are the best things you can possibly get, I'd say, for the Great Witches exchange, because they're not really going to get power crept. If Gung-Ho releases something better than this, it's going to be obviously game changing, but at the same time, these cards are better than any other card currently available, so to speak, at what they do. And like I said, it's not going to help you clear endgame content, but it's going to let you clear and optimize your game experience in a much more efficient manner. Now, let's say you have already Varroa and already have Saline, have plenty of hats that have the dungeon boost awakening. Maybe you may want to consider other options. Another option that I like to bring attention to is Reach's Hat. I feel like Reach's Hat has definitely improved over time because bind immunity is always useful. Skillbind resist has now become helpful in the current meta where lots of cards actually just don't have skillbind resist, and they do give a single TPA, which is only truly relevant for Daytona teams, but why not? And then the active skill gives you a full board unlock and changes the board to all 6 elements, and then it gives you 5 turns of damage, absorption, and color absorption cancellation. You may think 5 turns is excessive, but more is more. It was a buff. The cooldown didn't get increased. It's 25 turns still, and 25 turns for 5 turns of cancellation is pretty magical when you really think about it. And a couple of instances where I can foresee this being useful is in Shura 1, and hear me out for Shura 1. The reason for that is the Manoa at the very end of the dungeon can put up a 10-turn absorption of the color that you could be using, and that's obviously problematic. And there's also damage absorption for the green Manoa when she's below half health. So 5 turns to kill the spawn should be more than enough for whatever team you're playing through. I usually like to bring at least 3 turns of color absorption just in case, but Reach's Hat gives you more than that, so it gives you that big wiggle room and leeway, so you might be able to clear Shura 1 of a bit more ease. For a lot of my patrons who are trying to try Shura 1 for the first time, I always ask, do you have a Reach's Hat? Because like as a general solution, it works really well because Shura 1 doesn't need too many mechanic counters, and Reach's Hat takes up a single active skill slot and solves all your problems for the very end floor. So I think it is worthwhile there. And another place I find it useful is MD1, because MD1 you have Canna into Australis potentially, which is a lot of damage absorption, but Canna also preemptively locks your board when she appears. So Reach's Hat can counter the locked orbs, give you a board changer, which is helpful possibly, and then use your other orb changes to get the board you like, and then you have 5 turns to kill Canna and then potentially Australis on the subsequent floor. Again, if Australis spawns instead of Canna, you're able to potentially use the active skill to clear the ridiculous board Australis gives you. So point of the matter is, I think it's a useful thing in Shura 1 and MD1. I feel like the MD1 case is a bit better in co-op, but it's something that I've been using and it's just at least worth mentioning. But at the same time, Saline and Varroa are still going to give probably more value overall if you don't own those cards. For Zela, Zela's Hat is one of the more popular weapon assists for Nautilus teams because you get bind immunity, which Nautilus needs. You get combo warp, which is actually a big deal for the playstyle. I abuse the combo warp quite a bit for Nautilus teams. And then 4 Wood Rose for more damage. So it's everything you kind of want for a Nautilus team outside of a skill boost. And the active skill itself does give you 80% damage reduction. And you can use this as your shielding solution later on. Like, let's say you inherit this on a low cooldown card, you can use this as your shield for that point in time. Point is, it's a strong weapon assist for mono green teams, but at the same time, universally useful, not so great. It only really works for mono green and no other team whatsoever. And the last one I want to draw attention to possibly is Fasca. Like, she's still a strong-ish cleric, assuming you don't have other things that need to transform, because she does have a full cleric-style active skill that does give a movement time buff, gives lots of time extend, gives you respectable amounts of personal damage, and a 7x6 board if you're doing shenanigans of swapping. But the problem is she has no skill boost in her base form. So if anything else is transforming or being utilized, it's going to be definitely difficult to incorporate Fasca onto that given team because she's providing absolutely nothing at the beginning of the dungeon. And generally speaking, the biggest risks are at the beginning of the dungeon when you're trying to transform and get your team online, and the very end, which is the boss, which is obviously usually the hardest spawn. So in conclusion, for the Great Witch's Medal, I strongly believe that Saline and Varroa are the best choices if you don't have anything whatsoever. And if you have everything already, get another Saline or Varroa just for the weapon assist to get another dungeon bonus awakening so you can improve your intermediate button farming prowess. So with that being said, let me know what you think about the possible exchange options in the comments down below. Who did you trade for? And if you traded for someone I didn't mention, tell me the rationale of why you chose that particular card. With that being said, hopefully you all have a truly fantastic day. I wish you all the best luck in your own pad adventures, and happy puzzling.